Alright guys, this is part 2 to how to build a parking pad. In this video we're going to go ahead and cap off those larger rock that we spread in the previous video with an 1¼ inch stone. What this will do is fill in all those gaps in between the larger stone and create a nice clean level surface across the entire parking pad. Before you do this though, you want to make sure that you take some measurements with a rotary laser to ensure that your larger rock are below grade by at least a couple inches before you spread the new stone. To take measurements, we're going to use the TopCon rotary laser. This tool is critical if you're going to be building parking pads or any sort of grading by yourself. You just set the unit up on a tripod and you can walk around with your grading stick to take your measurements. For this project specifically, we need to be about 2 to 3 inches below grade so that we can spread the new finer stone across the surface, and that will bring us up to the finished grade. In these next few clips, you're going to see me walking around and taking multiple measurements. The reason I'm doing that is to ensure once I spread that 2 to 3 inches of new rock that I'm going to be at the grade level of the road that I'm standing on here. There are other methods you can use to obtain a level surface, such as using string lines across your project, attaching levels to those, and then grading according to those lines. However, they are far more time consuming to set up than using a rotary laser. If you only need to level 1 or 2 projects, you really don't need to invest in one of these lasers. However, if you're going to be getting into this line of work professionally, or you have a lot of projects you need to complete around your home, you definitely need to pick one of these up. It'll make it much more efficient for you and faster. Here I'm just watering down the entire surface of the pad. The reason I'm doing that is when it's been hot out for a long time, you're going to kick up a lot of dust and dirt with a skid steer or a tractor as you're spreading your new stone. All that dust and dirt will also get into the air filters on your machines and can possibly get into the engine depending on how dirty your air filters are. So it's always best to water down the site if possible. To spread the rock, I'm going to use a John Deere 1025R tractor. These machines are great when you're working on smaller projects and you don't need a skid steer. However, you need to make sure that you put some sort of counterweight in the rear to offset the weight of the rock when it's fully loaded. Now that we've checked the grade and we know that we're below it, I'm going to go ahead and backblade the entire surface before I spread the new stone. The reason you do this is there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies in there from you tracking back and forth with your excavator. This backblading smooths all that out and creates that nice level surface before you put down the new stone. Now that we have the surface all smooth, we're going to start taking bucket loads of gravel and spreading it. Make sure that you engage your 4-wheel drive on your tractor as you're inserting the bucket into the rock, otherwise it's much more difficult to get a scoop. If you notice, after I grab a scoop, I typically shake the bucket back and forth a couple times. The reason I'm doing that is to even out the gravel inside the bucket before you spread it. If you just get a scoop and then you go to dump it, you'll have more gravel on one side of the bucket than the other and it won't spread very evenly. So just give it a quick shake and that'll even it out. As a side note, guys, when you're spreading rock with a tractor and especially larger skid steers, make absolutely sure you know what your surroundings are before you're backing up. All it takes is one mistake with one of these machines at higher speeds, especially the skid steer, and you will seriously injure somebody or kill them. So again, just make sure you're looking behind you as you back and you know your surroundings at all times. If you guys have noticed, most of the time when I dump a load of rock, I go forward of that rock and then I backblade it. The reason I'm doing that is there's a lot of inconsistencies in the ground and just the way the gravel is distributed within the bucket. So just make sure you're backblading it from time to time so that you don't build up too thick of a layer before you have it nice and even. I slowed this clip down for you guys to show you how I typically spread rock. Sometimes I will spread rock moving backward, but probably 90% of the time I'm spreading rock as I move forward. The reason I spread rock this way is I usually have a better visual of what is happening in front of the machine. There's also another reason for it, and that is sometimes you can't get rock into a spot in front of you because of some sort of obstruction. So what you can do is tilt your bucket forward and then flip it at the very end. All that momentum of you going forward will actually push the rock forward of the machine over the obstruction and into the spot you want it to be. As you guys are going to get a load of rock, you always want to keep in the back of your mind where that grade is. Basically where the dirt is underneath your rock. What can happen is you'll go in to get that load of rock and you'll dive too deep and you'll end up cutting into the ground underneath the gravel, and now you're going to have a bunch of dirt mixed in with your rock. To avoid this, work your way from maybe the middle or top of your pile down into the gravel, and when you get close to the bottom, tilt your bucket down like I'm doing here and just drag the gravel backwards. This prevents you from ever getting any dirt mixed in with that rock. Once you have a sufficient amount of rock laid down, you don't want to continue to make passes back and forth in the way that we were before, from the road to the edge of that larger rock. Instead, you want to change the angle that you backblade and go across the entire surface. This fills in any low spots, and again, it smooths out all those ridges from the previous passes. While I was making passes backblading, I noticed a large rock in the gravel. You definitely want to get those out of your project, because when you backblade, they'll get stuck underneath your bucket and they'll make a large ditch as you're trying to smooth out the surface. If you guys are new to running tractors or skid steers, don't get discouraged about backblading if you're not very good at it in the beginning. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of hours to become comfortable and proficient at doing it. There are various angles you can have your bucket at, and it's really dependent on how aggressive you're trying to be at filling in low spots, or whether you're just trying to give that finished look and smooth out the ground. Typically, if you're trying to be aggressive, you want to have your bucket tilted down at a steep angle and then drag backwards. If you're just trying to smooth out ridges and really create that finished look, you're going to want a really shallow angle to your bucket and just lightly drag behind you. Again, this is going to take a lot of practice, so don't get discouraged. Eventually this technique will be second nature to you guys, so don't give up, just keep practicing. So that's it, guys. This concludes part 2 to how to build a parking pad. Although there's more work to be done on this job site, it's mainly landscaping from here on, which I feel filming would be outside of the scope of what I originally intended to do, which was to give you guys some tools and techniques on how to build parking pads. So I hope you guys learned something here, and I will see you guys on the next job. God bless.
For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. Wherefore remember that ye, being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time ye were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Christ. For he is our peace, who hath made both one, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace,